Nick Harris of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram joining us now to talk Cowboys. Nick, good afternoon. How you doing?
Doing great, fellas. How are y'all?
Doing wonderful. You're doing a heck of a job covering this team for us. We want to salute you for that and thank you for all the insights and reports. Now, Micah on Twitter last night, quote, "I'm preparing as if I'll be on the field the first week of camp, but it's in the owner's hands." Should we prepare for him not to be at the start in Oxnard?
You know, that's funny you mentioned that because I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I was saying, you know, when it came to training camp, when it came to, the expectation of Micah Parsons being there, it was always with the impression that he would, you know, starting back in December when we first started having these contract and off-season talks with Micah Parsons in the locker room, and then in January, and then a couple of times during the off-season, he wants to be at camp, and he mentioned it in that tweet. But that two-sentence phrase there, that's the one that got me too. It said that I am fully preparing to be there first week of camp, but it's in the owner's hands. And so I think now he's kind of putting that responsibility into Jerry's court, and we'll see what Jerry does with that piece of leverage.
What was your read on Stephen Jones' level of frustration yesterday when he was probed about it?
Yeah, that was certainly interesting too, because he had to see that question coming, or at least those line of questions coming, and it could just be the nature of the negotiation as well. I mean, it's kind of become mind-numbing even for us as reporters, right? It's just that, you know, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, and you want progress, and you want that to progress as reporters, as fans, as both sides in the agreement. It's just very interesting and weird that it hasn't progressed any further than from when we were first talking about this back in January.
Hey, Nick, do you think he's tired of having his ass kicked in these negotiations?
Yeah, at least from public perception, for sure, right?
Yeah.
And,
I mean, is he frustrated? Is he frustrated with the fact that honestly, I believe he doesn't get to negotiate. I really don't, because agents have figured out that the Dallas Cowboys, you just wait them out. You just wait them out. And unfortunately for the Cowboys, they haven't been able the deals that they've been able to get done, like the Oso Digizua deal, was an agent. They had a good relationship. They went under market value a little bit. You know, he's really good. The Diggs deal was done under market value. But, you know, there's a lot of these agents out there that know they can kick his ass. And I mean that in respect, but I mean, really not. He's frustrated.
It's respectful ass kicking. We can all appreciate.
I think he's frustrated, Nick, because he doesn't really get to negotiate. It comes down to, okay, we've got to do this. You know, here's the parameters of the deal. I don't get to try and sign you for $36.5 million or $38.5 million. I got to sign you for 40, 41. Here we go. You know.
Yeah, and the standard has been set with how the Cowboys have negotiated over the last few years with their deals, whether it be Dak both times, CeeDee Lamb, even with Zach Martin a couple of years back when he initiated the holdout, and they waited as long as they did to finally get something done. Even though it was a more mini time frame, there was still kind of that expectation that the deadline was going to get the deal done. And you know, shame on me going into this negotiation. I didn't expect a deadline to be the reason that this got done. You know, I thought the two sides were at a good enough starting point to where that they would probably have something done by now, was my expectation. And up until the owners' meetings in Florida a couple of months back, I at least had the expectation that it gets done before camp. But now with the rhetoric and dialogue on both sides, I'm not so confident in that anymore. And, you know, what does that look like for the Cowboys? What does that look like for Micah's readiness under a new defensive coordinator going into the season? You know, I think there are some fans that would tell you, you know, I'm tired of hearing about contracts. It's a new contract every year, and then they show up and they play anyway. Well, yeah, look how CeeDee Lamb started the season last year. Do you want Micah Parsons to have those same type of learning curves under a new system going into 2025? And that's something that Micah has talked about. That's something that Jerry Jones has talked about. They're cognizant of it. And I wonder, you know, you mentioned the agents talk, and the agents also, sure, you know, they have an expectation of how these things will go. And when an agent is going into a negotiation with the Cowboys, they have agent friends that have done the same exact thing in recent years. And I think if you're looking at it from David Mulugeta's perspective, Micah Parsons' agent, you see that TJ Watt is coming down the pipeline, and you wonder what that price point will be. And then maybe you sit at the negotiation table once that price point is made. And it probably gives Micah Parsons that extra little bit of comfort.
What have you seen in your thoughts on the secondary right now? All the moving parts that they're dealing with, the interchanging of the safeties. You got Wanye Thomas playing slot. Bland's another guy that would like a new deal. He might be your best slot corner, but he might not want to play in the slot. Diggs isn't there. He's rehabbing on his own. How's the secondary right now?
Yes, the defense as a whole, I kind of have some concerns about their depth overall. It's that depth is being highlighted here in OTAs, and sure, again, it's OTAs, it's underwear Olympics. There's not really a whole lot of stock you can put into, things that happen on the field. But seeing a couple of these safeties that have had to step off to the side with the rehab group, Donovan Wilson, he's been working back from a minor knee procedure that he had, and then Malik Hooker walked off the practice field yesterday. So those both your starting safeties, and you go into the team period 11-on-11, 7-on-7, and your starting safety is a Wanye Thomas and undrafted free agent signing Elijah Clark. Depending on your confidence in Wanye Thomas, I don't know how strongly you would feel about that safety group up against the other 31 teams in the league. And that's before we even start talking about the injury concerns that we have at corner to talk about with Trayvon Diggs, with Savone Revel. When will those guys be ready, if ready, when the season starts? Do they start on PUP? There's a lot of things to factor in when it comes to the defensive depth issues, but certainly it does start in the secondary, Zach.
Have you noticed anything from Jaden Blue?
Yeah, Jaden Blue, I think with the day three rookies as a whole, they've been worked in sparing times. It's been a little bit different from what we've seen from Tyler Booker and Donovan Ezeraku. We've seen a lot with those guys getting work with the ones, getting work with the twos. But with Jaden Blue, he's gotten a lot of reps with the threes. And then yesterday was the first time we really got to see him get some burn with the twos. And we've seen some kickoff return, punt return stuff off of Brian Anger's foot a couple of times with Jaden Blue too. So maybe that's a potential role for him in the preseason.
It's Nick Harris, Star Telegram here at Nick Harris FWST on Twitter if you're looking for him. The culture's been talked about a lot, Nick. A gentleman pointed out that there was a lot of great talk about culture and Mike McCarthy and nobody's given up in December. How do you reconcile all of that? Like, how much better is the culture? Is it players saying what the media wants to hear, or is it tangible in some way for you?
Yeah, when we talk about the culture under Brian Schottenheimer, looking at my opinion that I believe is fact is that it is a good culture that he's built early on. He's building it around communication. He's building it around having fun, competing every day. And I think those three things as cornerstones to that culture, if you look at, proven cultures in the past, you see those traits being associated with it. The thing that's interesting for me, and I think you were already alluding to it, is how it compares to Mike McCarthy's culture. If they are putting in so much energy and effort into creating a good culture, does that mean that they did not have a great one last year? And I don't think that, I don't think that's an over-encompassing statement. I think there's some nitty-gritty you can get involved with there when it comes to individuals. I think if you ask some people in that locker room last year, they would tell you, yeah, Mike McCarthy built a great culture here. It was player first. It was, there was communication. But I think if you ask some other players, would be like, yeah, communication wasn't the best around here. It's why the defense didn't start off strong. It was why when new pieces were integrated throughout the season that they weren't quite ready to hit the field. It was why CeeDee Lamb, when he arrived just a couple of weeks before the season, there was some issues whenever they did get on the field because communication wasn't strong. So I think it's circumstantial basis, but if you're looking at it from Brian Schottenheimer moving forward from 2025 and beyond, he has certainly done everything possible to make sure that those concerns don't exist. And when it comes to that individual basis, he does a much better job, in my opinion, of reaching out individually to each of his players and figuring out what the issues are before they come to a head.
Hey, Nick, who in the locker room got a hold of Tyler Guyton?
I think that would be Tyler Smith, his right-hand man, literally right shoulder man on the offensive line. Those two have spent a lot of time together this offseason, whether it be, hanging out in person and cooking and eating and changing their diets or even playing Call of Duty whenever they're at their respective homes and still spending time outside of the facility and then in the facility, learning this new system and bonding with offensive line coach Connor Riley. Those two guys have really taken to each other, and both of them went to college in the state of Oklahoma. Both of them are state of Texas kids, and they're going to be in the same age range for a while as long as both of them are still on the team. But yeah, that would be the guy that I would point to.
You buying it?
Buying what part of it exactly?
Well, I knew you were going to do this because you're always really good at doing this. You just don't let anybody ask you a question without really getting the answer the way it needs to be asked. But yeah, are you buying him and all the things he's talking about with the media that he he wasn't very mature, and he needs to be better, and all that. You buying all that?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I'm buying the intention from him. I am buying the purpose that he's created, and to kind of put it on a flip side of why I'm buying it. I was not buying it from Mozzie Smith this time last year, and still not for Mozzie Smith, for the record. But I think with Tyler Guyton, there's a lot of intention there, and the proof is in the pudding, I think, already, with how he looks physically. I think you've already seen some physical improvements there. But as far as buying on-field improvement, yeah, catch me in training camp, Brian.
Okay.
Nice.
I like it. There you go. Catch me in Oxnard.
Oh, Mike.
How about that mic?
Yep.
What are you thinking about George Pickens right now?
Yeah, I think a fascinating thing that I think that's formulating with George Pickens is his relationship with Dak Prescott. And I point that out specifically because it was a revolving door at quarterback at times in Pittsburgh. I mean, you just look at last year in a nutshell, and it was, all the quarterback controversy that they had throughout the year. And you never really felt like he connected with the quarterback in Pittsburgh or even during his time in Georgia. But coming into this outfit, he has Dak Prescott there. That's going to be his safe guy as his QB1 moving forward. And I think the relationship that they've built off the field, I think we saw that very minor translate onto the field yesterday during OTAs. And it was a point in red zone work. They were doing 7-on-7, and Dak was having to work off script a little bit and roll out. And he was directing traffic with George Pickens. And he was directing traffic in a way that, you would thought that they would had a pre-existing relationship at least for a few months instead of a few weeks. And then he was able to guide him right to the sideline. He put a ball on the money that only he could go out and grab. He fully extended. If you saw Bobby Belt's great drawing on Twitter, that was that's the play I'm referring to. And he hauled it in, tiptoed in for a touchdown, and drew some oohs and ahs from us in the media and from the sideline. But I think you see that off-field connection already translating on the field here during OTAs, and that's got to be exciting if you're a Cowboys fan.
Nick, I know it's early and they're probably not showing too much, but have you gleaned anything from this offense and just the way they're going about things? Does it look much different than what we've seen with McCarthy and company?
Yeah, that's super tough at this juncture, and I think already, with the media viewing practice, it's going to be vanilla. So I think you take that with already it's in a developmental aspect of things, and they're still putting things together from a playbook perspective. And now they do have a playbook, don't get me wrong, and a lot of these guys have spending a lot of time diving into it. I chatted it up with Jonathan Mingo yesterday, and I was like, hey, how's your offseason been? You been up to anything? He's like, nah, really, I've just been diving into this playbook. So there's guys that are spending time on it, and it's definitely a product that is fully encompassing, but I don't think we're really going to see that full product, Eric, until probably week 1 or week 2. And I think that's going to be an intentional effort.
Will Dak be 100% full contact when we get to Oxnard?
I would expect so. He's moving around and he's getting his reps in here during OTAs like he is a full participant. And I would expect him to be full contact in Oxnard, yes.
Young pass rusher, most likely to join the pressure party there with Micah and Osa.
Oh, Donovan Ezeraku, give it to me. I think this. I loved the pick when they made it. I had a first-round grade on the guy, and I'm a big fan of his potential. And seeing him already get some burn with the ones, and I think it's also his ability to cover guys out of the backfield that's going to give him some interesting intrigue on passing downs, because you see him off the edge, and as a quarterback or as an offensive play caller, you see that 41 jersey, and you go, okay, is he going to drop back and cover my running back coming out of the backfield here? Or is he going to blitz for my eyeballs? And I think that's going to be a fascinating thing for Matt Eberflus to work through here in his first year as defensive coordinator.
Nick, if there is a holdout, is that your Micah Parsons replacement?
Oh, you can't replace Micah fully, and I know I understand the spirit of the question, but I think from a roster standpoint and who trots out there on day one, that would be my leading candidate. You know how I feel about the guy.
Sure.
I think he's a talented pass rusher. I think his ceiling is as high as some of the best pass rushers in this league. That's how I feel about Donovan Ezeraku. I'll stand on the table about him, and I've continued to see that potential here early on.
Are the Cowboys going to exercise this $500,000 hit to Diggs?
Yeah, don't know on that one. That would be a good question for some of my other constituents on the beat. I know Tard Archer had the break on that one yesterday, and that's certainly a fascinating story. But you look at the contract language and you see how that is put forth. Even if he did show up to mandatory minicamp, which I do expect him to next week, he's not going to meet that percentage requirement. So at the very least, there's going to be a conversation had, I would assume, about that contract language and if he is subject to those penalties or not.
I mean, if the money's already lost, could you see him just skipping mini as well?
He would risk even more money by skipping minicamp. Those would be more fines with mandatory, with it being mandatory, and with it being under his second contract, they would not be able to waive those fines.
Got it. You're a beast, Nick. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.